If the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, then there's a solid case to be made that these horror heroes aren't quite playing with a full deck. Thankfully, most of them live to fight another day regardless, and it's certainly the case with these particular 10 horror heroes, all of whom got bamboozled by the very same gambit that almost killed them before. I'm Tilly from What Culture Horror, and these are 10 horror movie heroes who fell for the same shit in the sequel. Number 10. Ripley doesn't notice a xenomorph stowaway. Aliens. Ridley Scott's original Alien ends with Ripley evacuating the Nostromo shortly before it self-destructs, seemingly killing the xenomorph in the process. But of course Ripley then discovers that the alien creature has stowed away on board the escape shuttle, forcing her to do battle with it once more, eventually chucking it out from the ship and blowing it into deep space. James Cameron's sequel Aliens saw Ripley fall for the very same trick with the Xenomorph Queen. This time, Ripley, Newt, Bishop and Hicks escape the processing station on a dropship seconds before it explodes, evidently killing the Queen. But history repeats itself as once the heroes land, the Queen reveals that she's stowed away in the dropship's landing gear, forcing Ripley to blow it out of the airlock with the help of an exosuit cargo loader. Number 9. Kirsty falls for Frank's disguise. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Hellraiser's Kirsty Cotton is one of the most underrated final girls in horror movie history. A smart and resourceful young woman who generally holds her capable own against anyone with ill intent against her. However, she does fall for some gnarly trickery at the hand of her perverted murderous Uncle Frank, not the perverted murderous Uncle Frank from Always Sunny, who kills Kirsty's father Larry and swaps places with him, wearing his skin while pretending that Larry's corpse is his own. Kirsty later learns the truth and is able to foil Frank. He repeats the trick in Hellbound Hellraiser 2. With Kirsty now residing in a psychiatric hospital following the first film's events, she witnesses a vision of who she believes to be her father, skinless, begging to be rescued from hell. This prompts Kirsty to seek out the lament configuration in an attempt to resurrect him, but as it turns out, the skinless figure in her visions was actually Frank, who had once again posed as her father. Kirsty gets cut some slack due to being a teenager, and a traumatized one at that, but after Frank's previous bait and switch, she probably shouldn't have trusted the sight of a skinless dude. I tend not to. Number 8. Richie gets traumatized by Pennywise's doors. It, Chapter 2. In the It movies, Pennywise's entire shtick is that he terrifies the hell out of his victims before devouring them, because fear makes his meals taste better and all. Personally, I just prefer salt, but each their own. When the Losers Club enters the abandoned house on Neibolt Street, young Richie and Bill are faced with 3 doors, labelled scary, very scary, and not scary at all. Predictably, they pick the not scary door, only to be greeted with the traumatising sight of a girl ripped in half with only the upper portion of her body visible. This seems like the sort of thing someone would carry into adulthood as a core trauma memory, right? But in It Chapter 2, a grown-up Richie gets fooled by it again as the doors reappear, and, believing he's outmaneuvered Pennywise, decides to pick the very scary door this time around. Yet Pennywise evidently anticipated this, and when Richie opens the door, he's greeted by the lower half of the girl's corpse from 27 years prior. Number 7. Ash messes with the Book of the Dead. Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. You know, if you find a creepy old book in your vacation cabin or just anywhere, just maybe leave it alone. Ash Williams and his pals certainly didn't heed that advice in the Evil Dead movies. In the original, the group inadvertently summons the Kandarian demon after finding the Book of the Dead and playing a tape of incantations recorded by archaeologist Raymond Noby, resulting in a night of hell which seemingly leaves Ash the sole survivor. Now, to be completely fair to Ash here, Evil Dead 2 is both a quasi-remake of the original and a sequel to it. The opening sequence is a retconned recap of the first film's events, altered to show only Ash and his girlfriend Linda being terrorised by the demonic entity. All the same, Ash again picks up the Book of the Dead and listens to Noby's recorded incantations, bringing us back up to speed. And even if you disqualify Evil Dead 2 due to it being a partial remake, Army of Darkness again sees Ash screwing around with the Book of the Dead, messing up the incantation which will send him home, and instead unleashing an evil undead army headed by his own malevolent doppelganger. And then there's Ash vs Evil Dead where he... well, you get the idea. Number 6. Dr. Loomis's car gets sabotaged by Michael. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. In John Carpenter's original 1978 Halloween, Dr. Samuel Loomiss inadvertently facilitates Michael Myers' escape from Smith's Grove Sanitarium. While driving to the hospital, Loomis exits his car in order to make a call for the front gate to be opened, at which point Michael seizes the opportunity to steal the vehicle from the distraught Nurse Chambers. This leads to Michael heading back to Haddonfield to launch off his killing spree, and you know the rest. And in Halloween 4, Loomis again fell hook, line and sinker for Michael's vehicular tomfoolery. After learning of Michael's most recent escape, Loomiss decides to pursue him and eventually tracks him down to a gas station. Yet, once again, Loomiss makes the mistake of leaving his car unattended, as once he gets out and searches the station for Michael, the shape makes a speedy exit in a tow truck, causing the entire gas station to go up in flames. This naturally also makes Loomiss's car explode, leaving him to hitch a ride back to Haddonfield to continue his pursuit of Michael. We love you, Sam, but you should have seen this one coming. Number 5. Sarah enters the crawler-filled cave, The Descent Part 2. The Descent begins with Sarah and her thrill-seeking friends going spelunking, aka the best word in the English language, in a cave which turns out to be infested with grotesque, murderous creatures known as crawlers. You certainly can't blame Sarah for not anticipating this, because who expects to face off against a fleet of mutant humanoids when they go caving? Yet Sarah goes through all this again in The Descent Part 2, when the police drag her back to the cave to find her missing pals. Now, to be totally fair to Sarah, she's suffering from amnesia at the start of the story, and as a police suspect at the time, doesn't have much choice but to return to the cave. All the same, all hell breaks loose once more, with Sarah again going to war with the crawlers, and this time appears to end in her quite unambiguous demise. Really, this is less of a critique of Sarah as a fool than it is of the filmmakers for producing such a blatant rehash of a sequel which strained to contrive a reason for her to return to that damn cave. Amnesia? Yeah, right. Number 4. Billy lets Gizmo get wet, Gremlins 2, The New Batch. I promise you haven't started watching an entirely different video altogether based off that title. The Gremlins movies are centred around the 3 memorable rules of looking after a mogwai. Never expose them to sunlight, never get them wet, and never feed them after midnight. But nobody in the first film quite appreciates just how urgent these rules are, and so protagonist Billy doesn't take sufficient care in protecting Gizmo from water. Before long, Billy's young pal Pete knocks over a glass of H2O, prompting Gizmo to spawn 5 evil mogwai from his back and in turn causing all hell to break loose. Billy doesn't seem to have learned his lesson by the time Gremlins 2 The New Batch rolls around though, as after rescuing Gizmo from a science lab he leaves him unattended in his office. Shocker! Gizmo gets soaked once more, this time by a broken drinking fountain, and births more evil mogwai, kicking off the chaos all over again. Number 3. Charlie is ignored by the cops. Fright Night 2, New Blood. 2011's Fright Night remake sees protagonist Charlie coming to rightly believe that his new neighbour Jerry is a vampire, and when he calls the cops, they shockingly don't prove to be much help. When the police arrive to confront Jerry over his suspicious behaviour, he's able to defuse the situation with his charming personality, and the cops ultimately don't believe Charlie's claims, forcing him to deal with Jerry himself. While straight-to-video sequel Fright Night 2 New Blood is technically a standalone sequel, it does nevertheless feature Charlie as the protagonist once again, and he becomes suspicious of sexy college professor Jerry. He again calls the cops, who this time don't even bother coming to investigate. As soon as they hear Charlie talking about a vampire, they assume he's making a prank call and promptly hang up the phone. Considering the Popo offered no assistance last time, this was nothing but a waste of 30 seconds. Number 2. Sidney is targeted by a relative. Scream 4. Scream 3's big, divisive twist is that the single Ghostface killer is not only filmmaker Roman Bridger, but Roman is in fact Sidney's secret half-brother. While Sidney couldn't be remotely blamed for failing to know she had a secret sibling, it should have nevertheless primed her to view family members with no less suspicion than anybody else. But Scream 4 saw history repeat itself as the film's major Ghostface turned out to be Sidney's own cousin Jill Roberts, which again came as quite the surprise to poor old Sid. Though the average person can't really be expected to consider that any relative in their midst might be a psychopathic murderer, by the time you've dealt with literally 5 separate people killing your friends and trying to take your life, you should probably be skeptical of pretty much everybody. Number 1. Tommy Jarvis thinks he's defeated Jason for good, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. The title of the movie gives it away a bit, doesn't it? Now, when you're dealing with a seemingly supernatural serial killer, you should probably never ever believe they're dead for good, a mistake made by Friday the 13th's Tommy Jarvis. In the 4th movie, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, young Tommy seemingly defeats Jason for good by hacking him to pieces with a machete. Jason sits out on the 5th film, which instead features a Jason copycat, but he returns for the 6th movie, Jason Lives, albeit largely due to Tommy himself. Tommy, still traumatized from his encounter with Jason, wants to dig up Jason's corpse and cremate him, hoping it will bring him some closure, but in doing so causes Jason's corpse to be struck by lightning and resurrects him as a zombie. The film ends with Tommy narrowly defeating Jason again by anchoring him to the bottom of Camp Crystal Lake, believing he's ended Jason's reign of terror by returning him home, even though he remains very much alive on the lake's floor. Though Tommy's torment seemingly ends here, Jason is freed from his bondage at the start of the 7th film, The New Blood, to start his killing spree all over again. We've not seen Tommy in any official capacity since Jason Lives, but considering Jason's several rampages since then, it's tough to believe that word wouldn't have gotten back to him that his celebration was twice premature. And that's our list. What other horror protags did the silly not once, but twice? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and swing on by our channel again if you want to catch more content. I've been Tilly, and this has been What Culture. Thank you so much for watching, look after yourselves, and until next time, ta-ra!